Hello everyone and welcome back to Fly From Home. Contain your excitement and your shock. Yes, it's another video from me within a week of the last one. I wonder what could have happened to me to prompt this. Yes, I am at home off work at the moment with a knackered foot. So here I am playing Flight Sim again. So you're stuck with me, I'm afraid, for a little bit longer. Without further ado, I'm going to crack on with this because we've got quite an exciting aeroplane to look at today. It's the Flysimware Lancair Legacy, as any of you with eyes can see, because it's up on the screen right now. So, what's special about this particular aeroplane? So, the Lancair Legacy is a kit plane built by an American company called, surprise, surprise, Lancair. It costs about $72,000. There's a fixed gear and retractable gear version. And it's a fully carbon fibre, very low drag, high performance, side-by-side seats monoplane with your choice of engines. It takes any number of engines, but the version that Flysimware have chose to represent here is a variant with the Continental IO 550 engine in it, both the turbo and non-turbo versions. An engine which you would most often see inside things like the Beechcraft Bonanza, the Baron, and the Cirrus SR22 Turbo. So some serious high-performance aeroplanes. And I don't know if you can pick up the vibe from the image that we've got here. We'll certainly see it when we load into the simulator. But this thing is absolutely tiny. So tiny plane plus huge engine equals rocket ship. And that is basically the whole vibe of this thing, as you can see from the statistics up on the right-hand side here. Not that these are enormously accurate. I have no idea why that's in kilometers now. We aren't Russian. But yeah, it's really fast. It goes really high. And it goes pretty far as well. It burns reasonably large amounts of fuel. But you're going so fast, it almost doesn't matter. So let's have a look at the liveries that come with this. There's various different variants, by the way, but it basically boils down to a version with a turbo and a version without a turbo. A version with realistic castering nose wheel steering physics and a version with a easier to use nose wheel steering system, depending on whether you've got proper rudder pedals or whether you use a twisty joystick or, heaven forbid, keyboard commands or something like that, to make it easier for you to taxi. So versions are basically all the same apart from turbo, non-turbo. Liveries, you've got a bunch of different liveries, all representing presumably real aeroplanes. Got the nice red one we just saw and a bunch of others here. They're all November registered apart from that first one that's Canadian registered. November registered is the system of registration for the United States. It's an experimental aircraft in the United States, by the way, which means it is subject to slightly less stringent checks and certifications, I believe. I'm not an expert. I don't fly in the United States, as you may tell from my horrible British accents. Although I have flown in the United States years and years ago. Did a bit of flying in Florida. It was very cool. Maybe I'll come back one day. Orange, bright orange thing, looks like the Dutch football team. And finally, we've got a South African registered one, specifically South African registered experimental type. They have a different reg for regular registrations in South Africa. Yellow and white, they let all sorts of crazy things go in South Africa. Go have a look at a Jet Cree if you want confirmation of that. There's one other colour scheme to look at as well, and it's this one right here. It's called a Starhawk, and it represents an actual real-life aeroplane that won an award at the Experimental Aircraft Show, something like that. I don't know, I'll put a piece of text up. It's basically a really nice, shiny aeroplane with a lot of cool kit in it, and it won an award for being really cool, I guess. So, that's the Lancair Legacy. Very, very fun-looking little aeroplane. I obviously have zero experience flying one of these around. I can't imagine there's an awful lot of them knocking about. Obviously, a lot of them, maybe a lot of them in the States. Certainly none in the United Kingdom, so I've never got the chance to fly one of these. So, I am basing my experience flying this in the simulator off of high-performance single-engine aeroplanes I've flown in the real world. Extra 300 is probably, in terms of the aerodynamics, possibly the closest. Obviously, it's an aerobatic type, different wing, much thicker. The DA40-42 have got very thin, efficient wings, low drag airframe. Cirrus SR-22 I've flown a little bit as well. Not enormously enamoured by that aeroplane, no offence to Cirrus fans, but I've got a little bit of experience to draw on with this, so that's what I'll be trying to do for this video. So without further ado, let's load into the sim and have a look what it looks like in there. So here we are in the simulator. We're on the ground at Leeds Bradford International Airport in the north of England. I'm going to be taking a small flight down to East Midlands International Airport, hopefully showcasing the performance of this thing and also some of the handling characteristics as well. But before we get started, I'm going to have a quick walk around of the aircraft, because this is a native Flysim 2024 aircraft and therefore it has all the walk around features. So there's all sorts of clickable click spots on the outside of the plane. I don't know if it's going to let me, I will, there we go. So we can, as you can see, take the fuel caps off there. We can come round and we can take the pitot covers off the aircraft. The chocks are under here as there. We can take the engine blanks off. We can come up here and check the oil. Ooh, look at this. And similar to a lot of other very high fidelity single engined aircraft or GA aircraft in general that are present in the sim right now, this has a persistent maintenance feature. So depending on how well you look after the engine between flights is going to dictate whether you're going to experience any kind of engine issues, shall we say, when you're flying around subsequently in this airplane. It will remember cockpit configurations and all sorts of things between flights. If you want it to, you can turn it on and off. But it's very cool and realistic and immersive and all of that fun jazz. You can see you can manually manipulate the ailerons a little bit to check that they are okay. Tyres are looking good. All of this stuff is monitored by the maintenance system of the airplane, so things wear out, wear down over time. And hopefully you're getting a sense of what I said in the hangar segment. This is a very small aeroplane. You can see there where I popped the canopy release there. These little captions came up on the side of the aeroplane. Obviously, they are not there in real life. They are just there to allow you to enter the aeroplane without having to resort to key commands or anything like that, which is pretty cool. So there you go. That is the exterior of the Lancair Legacy. Very small aircraft, but very cool looking aircraft. Almost fighter jet looking thing. And hopefully you're getting a feel for the quality of the external model as well, because this has been done to an incredible level of detail. We can sort of get down and have a look, for example, at the wingtip navigation and strobe lights. You can see the individual little LEDs in there, the screws holding it all together. It's incredibly highly detailed, so nothing to complain about in terms of the external model, that's for sure. Okay, so here we are now in the cockpit of the aeroplane, and the quality of the visual model continues in here. It's an incredible looking bit of kit. Really, really nice. You can get really close to all this stuff and it looks absolutely spot on. See the little stickers and things there. You can see the logo there. You've got the reg of the aircraft in some fancy script up there. I'm sure they went and had a look at the real airplane to make sure this is exactly what the real cockpit looks like. So very, very cool indeed. I'm just make sure my mags are off because that's very bad practice. There we go. Right. Anyway, so like I said, short flight, and it will be a short flight because of how fast this thing is. Leeds Bradford to East Mids, taking it up to high-ish altitude because this is the turbocharged variant of the aeroplane. So that means that it is going to maintain its performance all the way up to a critical altitude. So we should be seeing that kind of performance, no drop in manifold air pressure the higher we climb up to a point. We're going to have a look at the general handling characteristics of the thing as well, and then a bit of circuit flying around East Mids and see how we get on there. Conditions in the simulator are full ISA standards, so we've got no wind, no weather, 15 degrees outside air temperature, and 1013 hectopascals, 2992 on the altimeter as well. So to give our performance the best possible chance of working out. Now, before I get into performance, It's very difficult to find performance graphs for this aeroplane, I believe probably because it's an experimental type and because there's all sorts of different engine types that can be fitted to this aeroplane. I can't actually find any performance graphs for things like rate of climb, cruise speed, that sort of thing. I can only get manufacturers stated cruise climb figures, manufacturers stated cruise airspeed figures. So I'm going to be trying to go for those as much as I can and match those up to the real world figures, but we'll see how we get on anyway. But yeah, I'm going to shut up now and start setting the plane up. Okay, so before we start, I've loaded the aircraft to about 75% of its total maximum takeoff weight. We've got full fuel, one pilot on board, that's all it takes. So you can't take a great deal of weight with you in these aeroplanes, apparently, which is understandable, really. Now, the tablet that I'm using here is not a custom tablet. There is a custom Flysimware app within the default FS 2024 tablet function, which allows you to do certain things, but it's not a full-on EFB as you might find in something like the A2A Comanche that has a very advanced EFB app in it. This is a little bit more basic, but it's still very good. As you can see, the maintenance stuff is all here. You can see our aeroplane is in pretty good nick. Oil and maintenance items are all quite good. Tyre pressures are all right. Brake pads are fine. I've been flying this aeroplane around a little bit. As you can see, it's a little bit used, but I've been doing my best not to abuse it. You can see the wear rate can be changed up here, and we can do a full service on the aircraft there. You can see a good diagram of the TSIO 550. Yeah, there we go. Had a small brain fart there. Fuel, you can service the aircraft from here. You can call a fuel truck to come in, and you can actually see the pipe coming in. It's pretty cool. Maintenance we've just seen. Failures, there's all sorts of advanced failure systems in the airplane. You can see I've turned it off at the moment just so nothing falls off the plane while I'm trying to review it. But obviously when you're flying around, you can turn this on, change the failure rate. If you want some fun, you can turn it right up, and all sorts of things will fall off the plane as you're flying around, and all sorts of different options and things there. So that's that. In terms of checklists, you're pretty much reliant on the ones in this tablet here. There's not a great deal that comes with the aircraft. There is a bit of literature that comes with the plane. It's pretty good, but it's not quite as in-depth as you might find with some other aircraft, so you are pretty dependent on this checklist. Anyway, without further ado, I'll start rattling through this. This is just the pre-flight cabin check, so all documents are on board, landing gear switch is down, avionics master's off. A master switch can come on, gear position lights, so you can see 3 greens on that. A PFD and MFD are both loading up the voltage, so continue on that. We'll go to the engine page there. Electrical, so we're looking for between 23 and 25 volts on there. We can see we've got 26, which is actually a little bit over what we need. Interesting. Fuel quantity, we've got full tanks, and also we have a fuel calculator here, so we can hit reset on this, add our full 66 gallons, as you can see in there, and it will, based on the fuel flow rate, calculate the amount of fuel we have remaining in the aircraft. Very useful in case you lose your fuel tank sensors, which is always a possibility in a light aircraft, so make sure you set that up before you go. Fuel quantity set, fuel tank selector is set. We'll start on the left tank. Similar sort of fuel system to a PA-28 in this aircraft, only burns from 1 tank at a time. Avionics master apparently comes on. Lights, so we'll make sure that we have got the nav lights on to indicate that we are going to be starting soon. Pitot heat is off for now. I mean, I suppose we can, I don't want to drain the battery too much, but that should come down pretty significantly with the pitot heat on. You can see the amps draw from that coming up. Fuses, so presumably all the fuses work in this aeroplane. Okay, so there we go. That's where the fuses live. They're in this tray here that slides out for the right hand side of the panel. Very, very cool. So you can't actually click these individual breakers, but presumably you can click to reset them in the failure system. So if you get a circuit breaker pop, you can reset that a total of 1 times before you have to consider that system failed. That's the usual logic you use with aviation circuit breakers. We'll slide that back in. They're all very cool. So the fuses are checked. Flaps. So let's check the flaps fully deploy all the way down to the 40-degree setting. We've got a flap angle indicator on the PFD, but we also have a physical number printed on the flaps themselves. They do come down all the way, and the other side as well, so we've got no asymmetry. Once we've done that, we're turning the master battery off. Okay, the next thing on the checklist is the exterior pre-flight, which we've already done. So cameras are on and recording. Well, yeah, definitely. We're recording a YouTube video right now, so that's done. Pre-flight inspection's complete. Weight and balance is all done and dusted. Emergency equipment's on board. Yeah, you've been briefed. Seatbelts are adjusted and secure. Bear in mind that seating positions in this aeroplane are fixed. They're actually fixed to the bulkhead of the aircraft. You move the pedals similar to the DA-42. You can actually see the pedal adjustment little handle down here, very similar to how they are on an airliner, actually, with a crank handle to them. So you actually move the pedals instead of the seat. Logistics, sure, whatever that is. Oh, flight bag and water. Yeah, it's okay. We're hydrated. All switches are set for start. Yeah, we're all good to go there. Nothing out of the ordinary. Canopy is down and latched. So the latch is this bit here. So we make sure that that is all secured. Ram air, which is this one, it's the alternate air intake, is set to close. The brakes are set. Landing gear selector is in the down position. Master switch on. The starter key is in and ready to go. The MFD's firing up. Expires April 26. That's out of date. How remiss of me. Oh well. We're not going to be IFR flying today, so that's fine. MFD is enabled. MFD setup. We've already done the fuel quantity a second ago. Let me just double check that that's still in there. It is. So happy days. Strobe lights. I don't like using the strobe lights on the apron. I usually like to just use the nabs. So we'll use those and keep a good lookout for people. Strobes even, well, I mean LED ones less so, but the old-fashioned strobe lights were all kind of a risk of fire, or if there's any kind of fuel vapors on the apron, and also they just blind people. They're just bad manners to be operating your strobe lights while you're still parked on the apron. Little bug, you can actually see the lights shining through the structure of the wing. I'm sure Flysimware will get on top of that at some point, but it's something to note. So that's that. Before start check is complete. So engine start, mixture cold engine full rich. So it is already full rich. Make sure props full forward as well. Throttle lever full forward, and we're going to pop the fuel pump on like that. Leave it for 4 or 5 seconds or so. Turn it back off. Crank the handle back to 5/8. That's very precise. And then we're going to crank the engine and hopefully it'll fire. So let's see how we go. I've actually got a switch on my yoke for this, so I'll be using that. There we go, fires up very nicely. And immediately I'm bringing the power back to 1000 RPM. Something I love about this is that the RPM increases as the engine starts to warm up a little bit, which is exactly what happens in a real light aircraft, piston engine aircraft. The engine always starts quite rough and then slowly builds up RPM as the oil warms up and starts moving around nicely. So there we go, very, very good. Sound is superb. I've flown Cirrus with this type of engine and prop config, and that's exactly what they sound like. So I'm sure any Lancair pilots in the chat will be able to tell us in the comments whether it is accurate or not in their opinion, but it certainly is in mine. Oil pressure is in the green. We don't need to look at a warm engine start because it's not a warm engine start. So that's good. After engine start, power levers to 1000 RPM. Mixture doesn't need to be lean because we're not very high off the ground. Avionics master, we're going to turn the alternators on first, and then the avionics master can come on. The fuel pump is off. Both the alternators are on. Avionics is on. Backup EFIS is on. Electric system. We are now charging. The draw is plus 30, so that's looking good. Headsets. Yeah, I guess you put your headset on. I'm not entirely sure how to do this, but there was a clickable headset. There we go. So now you can really hear the sound of the thing. But we'll keep our Dave Clark's on for now. Yeah, active noise cancelling's on. I'm not a big fan of taxiing around with active noise reduction actually most of the time when I fly a light aircraft, because it's usually a good opportunity to listen to any kind of weird pops and bangs with the engine while you're still on the ground before you take off. So normally I would not be turning my noise reduction on my headset until we've actually completed the engine checks, but that's just me. Canopy seal. So I don't know if any of you guys ever watched the video that I made about the little black square Velocity XL, which is a weird little canard design aircraft, very, very high performance, kind of similar to this, but even weirder. It also has this. It's a canopy seal. So it's a pump you turn on there, and you hear all of a sudden how things get quieter because there's an inflatable seal all the way around this canopy that seals it closed, which is great for both drag, because it makes sure there's no gaps in the canopy, and also for noise as well. And presumably drafts and other things that you're going to encounter at high altitudes. Generally, you're going to be flying this aeroplane pretty high altitude. So that's the after engine start checklist complete. Before taxi, flaps are up. Fuel selector. Okay, we'll go with the right tank for now. Cabin heat defrost doesn't required. Active noise reduction, sure. Radio's fine. ATIS don't need. Clearance don't need. Nav system set for the flight. Yeah, it's taking us to East Midlands. Transponder is 7,000 and standby. And autopilot can be set off. So trim servos, autopilot servo are on, and before taxi checklist is complete, next is the run up. So without further ado, let's do some taxiing, shall we? So as I said in the hangar, it's a fully castering nose wheel. We've got the fully castering nose wheel variant selected here because I do have rudder pedals available to me, and as you can see, with a fully castering nose wheel, the aircraft is very capable of just spinning around on the spot almost, but it's a lot more tricky to get the thing going back straight again, so I'm now having to use opposite rudder to straighten the nose wheel out. Now, when there's a bit of airflow over the rudder, you can almost steer it like you would a regular, quote-unquote, nose wheel steering aeroplane. But with the throttle at idle, at low ground speed, you have to use the differential brakes to pivot the aeroplane around. The way I like to think of it is the aeroplane is basically a shopping trolley or a shopping cart for our American friends, and effectively what you're doing is having to swing it left and right using your brakes at low airspeed or with a low amount of airflow over the rudder. Now we're going to take off runway 14 here at Leeds Bradford because we're going to be facing in the right direction. There's no wind in the sim, so it really doesn't matter what runway we use for departure, but we're going runway 14, so bear with while I taxi all the way to the end. Okay, so here we are on a little turning pad at the end of runway 14. Any build scenery, by the way, for Leeds Bradford. It's really, really accurate, would recommend. So the parking brake is set. We've checked all our instruments and brakes as we're taxiing. The HSI is fine, attitude's fine, turn's fine. Taxiing, yeah, sure. Canopy is fine. We're all strapped in. Alternate air is off. Yeah, sure. Autopilot and trim servos both on. Angle of attack sensor. Very cool. Thank you very much. Bit of F-18 vibe going on there. Bit of bitching Bessie. Very cool. CW Anum is working. CW Anum I think they mean a nun, as in annunciator panel. I think that's the caution warning panel, so we'll just test that. Yeah, it's all good. We'll leave it on bright because it's a nice bright day. CO detector. Do we have a CO detector somewhere? Probably. Presumably there's a carbon dioxide detector in here somewhere. I can't find it, and I certainly can't find it in the manual, so please let me know where that is. Flaps set for takeoff. So we set 10 degrees of flaps, which is the first setting, like that. So that's all good. Fuel pump set to low boost, which we've got there. Speed brakes are, we'll check them and then we'll make sure they're retracted. So the aircraft has speed brakes, a bit like a Mooney. Little electrical operated things that come up from the wings there, and they are working and stowed. Canopy seal is on. Cabin environment, sure, it's fine. Autopilot. Okay, so let's do a quick check of the autopilot, shall we? So autopilot mast is on. Let's put it in heading hold. And just give it some movement on there. And we should, there we go, see the stick going off to the side. And we'll check our autopilot's disconnect switch. Presumably, there we go, it goes back to the middle and we get the warning. So, presumably one of these is a disconnect switch, but they're not labelled. Apparently not, according to the manual. None of these switches are to do with disconnecting the autopilot. You've got a control wheel steering button here, and you've got a push to talk, and you've got the trim. So, weird. Usually you have an autopilot disconnect on the end of the trim, never mind. On the end of the stick, sorry. But that's all checked. Flight instruments are fine. Flight controls, so let's do our full and free check. So, full left, full right, full forward, full aft, left and right on the pedals, and obviously we'd make sure that the aircraft flying controls are doing the appropriate actions as we're doing that. I don't know if you can see behind us. Yeah, we can see the elevator as well. So that's all full and free in the correct sense. Fuel quantity is yet fine. We've got about 65 gallons remaining in the tanks. Set to fullest tank, so they are pretty much the same. The left-hand tank is slightly better. We've done our power checks on the right tank, or we're going to do our power checks on the right tank, so we'll leave it on there for now. In fact, nah, I'll tell you what, let's flip it now and do the power checks on the other side, because it is slightly fuller. Pitot heat we're going to leave off until we actually pull onto the runway. So first of all, let's power check the aircraft. So RPM 1700. It's good. Mags. Looking for a drop of no more than 150 RPM as usual. It's about 80 RPM there, maybe a little bit more, maybe like 100, so that's fine. Electric system, so we can see volts and amps are all on the green. We can put Pitot heat on, we can see it's accepting that load. The mags are set to both. Propeller exercise, so let's bring the RPM up a little bit to get the propeller working. I'm just going to exercise the prop back to course, so we're looking for increase in oil pressure, decrease in RPM, sorry, a decrease in oil pressure, increase in RPM. Looking over the front, looking for any oil coming back from the governor. And one final one for good measure. Come back to 1700 now. Temperature's looking a little bit hot. Let's whack the oil cooler door open while we do this. Engine parameters are all the green. Navigation system's done. Landing light we're going to do when we pull onto the runway. Ram air is going to come open when we take off, so let's do that now. System warnings there. We just got EGT temperature, and that's because we're at idle, and the parking brake and takeoff plan. Okay, it's going to be a VFR departure from runway 14 at Leeds. If anything happens before V1, we are going to reject the takeoff. After rotation, we'll take it into the air. If it's an engine failure, we'll try and land on the remaining runway. If we can't do that, we'll land somewhere off the end of the airfield. If for whatever reason we can't make it back to this place, there's Church Fenton next door. It's pretty long, and we should be able to land there. And I'm presuming you've got no questions, because I can't hear you anyway. So, final checks, ATPL, so approach path is all clear because there's no traffic in the sim today. Transponder is going to 7,000 and altitude reporting. Peter heat we're going to throw on, and all the lights. So I'm going to put the landing lights on pulse, and I'm also going to throw the strobes on as well. Okay, we are pretty much good to go. I'm just going to set the heading to runway heading and the altitude bug to 8,000 feet. You can see we've got 2, 9 and 9 are 2 on the altimeter setting there, which is today's setting. It is altimeter standard, as I said. So for departure, I've been struggling to find official power setting figures for this aircraft, but what I can find is that you're aiming for about 30 inches on the takeoff roll, and then climbing at 25 inches and 2,500 RPM, and cruising at about 2,400 RPM, 23 inches of manifold pressure. But we'll see what we get out of the thing, see what she's happy at. I'm going to not do a performance departure. I'm going to let the thing roll a little bit before we add the power in, because castering nose wheel really emphasises the potential your issues you have with small, powerful aeroplanes like this. So I'm adding the power in now, going for 30 inches. Take the power, set airspeeds alive. Looking for 80 knots for the rotate. There's 80, gentle back pressure on the stick. Off the ground we go. A little bit of nose up trim required. Keep the gear down just while there's usable runway underneath us. Okay, taking care to keep the speed in within the flap limiting range. Gear's coming up now. Now we're out of usable runway. Great sound effects. And flaps coming away now. Just going to tweak the RPM back to 2,500 now. And we're going to let the aircraft accelerate to a more comfortable climb speed of about 120 knots. Bear in mind that's faster than most light aircraft can cruise, and that's what we're climbing at, so straight away you can see the performance of this thing. Engage heading and IAS and get the autopilot in quickly, just so we can do the outer takeoff checklist. So the landing gear's up, the attitude is good for 120 knots, flaps are retracted. The ram area is open, and this is saying 2,600 RPM, so we'll go for a little bit more RPM. So you can see we're going up at 2,000 feet a minute, which is the book figure for this aircraft. Now, I did read that it said 25 inches on the manifold pressure, so we'll try that. That's obviously going to affect our climb performance a bit because we're going to reduce throttle a bit, so we'll see what we get out of that. 25 inches set. Seems quite a low power setting actually. So I don't know if that information that I managed to scrape together was correct or not for this particular engine type of the Legacy, because all of a sudden our climb performance is not looking too hot anymore. But we'll see. just says set the power to 2600. Well, that's not a power setting, is it? It's an RPM setting. Anyway, fuel pump can come off now. Mixture, yeah, we'll leave it as full rich at the moment. Check the engine parameters, they're all looking good for now. And the nav page and oxygen is on automatic mode. We're not going to need it because we're not going past 10,000 feet, so that's fine. I'm going to bump the manifold pressure back up to 30 because it did seem a lot more happy at that, and it's nowhere near over boosting or over stressing the engine from what I can tell. All the T's and P's are very much happy, so we'll give it a bit more sauce. Yeah, the landing gear's up, love. Not sure where that's coming from. Cool. So that's that. We can now go to nav mode on the autopilot. And she's going to level off for us at 8,000 feet. Very capable autopilot system in this aeroplane. I suppose helps because it's really set up to do long flights. Now, if I can get the thing to start, I've had a little bit of trouble actually getting this thing to come on, but case in point. So this little thing is supposed to be a timer that tells you about every 5 minutes to change your fuel tanks. But for some reason, I cannot get it to turn on. Answers in the post. Okay, we're level now. I'm just letting the aircraft speed up a little bit towards a cruise speed of about 200 knots before I am going to bring the power back a touch. Let's go for 25 and 25, that seems sensible. See, we're tazzing out at about 220 knots right now, which is serious performance, and it's also what the book figure is for this aircraft's cruise as well. Well, as much of a book figure as I can find. So the fuel pump is off. Yeah, the cruise power is set. Mixture. So let's sort the mixture out. So I'll come across to this side of the cabin a little bit so we can see it. So we'll turn the lean assist on, and we're just going to bring the mixture back until we've got peak temperatures. You can see now we're slightly lean of peak because the temperatures are going back down again, so we're just going to go forward just a touch to peak, and then a tiny bit further forward than that as well, just to be a little bit safe. So there's our mixture set for the cruise. Monitor the engine. Yeah, it's looking great. Fuel balance. Yeah, let's do a fuel tank flip. It's very easy to let's check. Fuel pressure's good, still good. It's very easy to forget to do that in an aircraft like this, and that little timer thing is actually really useful. Oh, there we go. Got it to come to life. There we go. No idea what I did there, but now it's working. 5 minutes to run until the next tank change. It'll beep at us when it's time to change that. Oxygen, yeah, it's fine. We're not going to be using that at 8,000 feet. So, there we go. We are in the cruise. We're screaming along at 210 knots through the ground, over the ground, sorry, and through the air. And we're all lovely and comfortable. Right, so as you can see, the airplane is extremely capable. I wouldn't expect nothing less from Flysimware. They make some excellent, excellent products. One of my favourite Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 airplane was their Cessna 414, which was a really, really great thing. I really hope there's a FS 2024 native version of that coming out soon, because I absolutely love that airplane. But we can expect something pretty similar from this aircraft, hopefully. Now, they were always, the 414 was always, to me, probably the most accurate flying and feeling light aircraft in that whole simulator, so I'm expecting some really good general handling performance out of this thing when we do our general handling manoeuvres, which we're going to do now. So we're going to go manual flights, and we're going to start off with some basic general handling stuff. So I'm going to put the fuel pump on low to help with the fuel pressure in case things start getting a little bit fruity. We're slowing down a touch. We'll slow down to something slightly less fighter jet like. I'm going to turn the flight director off as well so we get our raw data back. So 140 knots is probably about sensible for general handling. It's well above the manoeuvre margin speed, but it's also well below VNE. Look out, we're going to go to the left and we're going to roll in. So the controls of this aeroplane is, as you might imagine, extremely sensitive and lightweight. It's very, very precise as well. You can fingertip fly this thing. I've got a Warthog joystick and I am just barely putting any input at all for this. It's very easy to tweak your hand a tiny bit and put the thing into a 500 feet a minute descent, which is not ideal, but as you can see, 45-degree angle of bank, easy to maintain altitude here with a little bit of input. 60 degrees angle of bank, yeah, pretty much the same, bit more back pressure required. Barely any rudder, which, you know, might be accurate for this aircraft. I'm now losing altitude, so I'm going to add a bit more back pressure and anticipate the rollout. Leveler off. Very, very easy to complete that manoeuvre. Very sensitive airplane, very nice airplane to fly. It's quite twitchy, though, as you can see with my difficulty to put smooth inputs in. I think that's probably very accurate for an aircraft that weighs as much as this one does and has such high performance aerodynamics. So full marks for the steep turn. Very, very nice. Just a quick check I like to do in these sorts of manoeuvres is just to check the rudder behaviour. So I'm going to just sort of trim out a little bit and take my hand off the stick, because I'm just going to add some rudder in now. So I'm going to try left rudder. You can see the yaw coming in there and the secondary roll, and the more rudder I put in, the more kind of dramatic that is becoming. And we've got a spiral dive developing there, which is exactly what you'd expect to see in that sort of situation as well. So marks from that. It's a very basic test, but it's always good to just get a feel for the general handling setup of the aeroplane. Now, the next maneuver we're going to do is the big one. It's going to be a stall. Now, I've read up on the stall characteristics of these aeroplanes, and as you might imagine, they are very tricky little things to deal with in the stall, which is why there are so many pieces of technology in this aircraft to help you avoid it. Things like the angle of attack gauge up here, the audio warning, all the fancy avionics telling you the buffet speeds and manoeuvre margin speeds on the speed tape. It's all there to keep you away from the stall. However, when the thing does stall, apparently the onset is extremely sudden, there's very little buffet, and it can be extremely violent. So we're expecting some exciting stuff to come now. Now, obviously in real life I'd be doing a HASL check to make sure that the aircraft, and there's our little change the fuel tank timer, perfect timing just as we go into the stall. There we go, we'll reset that. So there we go. You can hear bitching Bessie going off. And something to note here is how slow the thing slows down. Just shows how efficient that wing is and fuselage. Very, very, very low drag. Part of why it's so incredibly fast. Fuel flow is about the same as you'd get out of an SR22 turbo, but it cruises so much quicker than one of those. So overall the fuel economy is much better than an SR22. Now we're starting to hear a little bit of light buffet coming out as we approach our clean stall speed. There is the warner. Airspeed's gone yellow. Very little back pressure required to hold the nose up here. We're expecting it to go any second. There she goes, big wing drop, incipient spin, in fact full spin, outer spin rudder, full forward. No power, we're just going to do it without power, recovering back to positive climb. So, there we go! It tries to kill you, which is honestly exactly what I expected. Reading about this aeroplane, Lancair pilots, please chime in and let me know if that's a bit overly dramatic, but I was certainly expecting a big wing drop. We actually started off with an incipient spin, which then developed into a full spin. So the important thing is not to touch the throttle at all. Full idle on the throttle, full forward on the stick, and then out of spin rudder. So very dramatic stall characteristics exhibited by the Flysimware Legacy. Exactly what I was expecting, but Anyone who's flown this aircraft in real life, please chime in and let me know what this thing is actually like to stall. Probably doesn't help that we're up in quite thin air, 8,000 feet. Maybe should have done this at slightly lower altitude, but I have tested this on my own before I filmed this video, and it does exhibit pretty much the same characteristics at low altitude as well. Okay, next maneuver is going to be a landing configuration stall. So we're going to crank some flap out, put the gear down, I'm going to stall her in this configuration. Now we're expecting much lower speed, but in terms of the handling, no idea. It's aircraft usually stall in a more benign sense when they've got flap out, but that's not a guarantee, certainly with a high-performance aerofoil like this one. Let's see what happens. Oh, the wing's going again, not quite a full spin. Much more benign that time, lower airspeed. Okay, flap is coming out of drag flap. Power's coming back in. Got a positive climb, the gear's coming up. Take out another stage of flap, and another, and all the rest of it. I'm climbing away happily clean now. So yeah, slightly more benign with high lift devices deployed on the wing and the gear down, which is good to know, because where are you most likely to stall an aeroplane? Probably in the circuit when you're trying to line the thing up with the runway. And you're probably going to be in your landing configuration when you're doing that, or at least a partial landing configuration. So it's good to know that the thing is a bit less psychotic when you've got some flippy flappies sticking out of the wing. So there we go. I'm going to get the thing back into nav. Alt. Autopilot master. Cool, so we've got 20 miles to run. That is not far at all. So I'm going to make sure we get set up for our joint to East Midlands. In fact, I'm going to start a descent now. The power back. I'm going to close the oil cooler as well, because the challenge in a descent in this type of high performance, high altitude airplane is actually keeping temperature in the oil rather than the other way around. I can assist things a little bit by leaning the aircraft out more to try and get the temperatures to come up a little bit, but there's only so much you can do. So worst case, you've got to add a little bit of power and reduce your rate of descent. Anyway, let's see what we can put in here. So in terms of IFR rates and all that kind of stuff, these units you'll be familiar with from Microsoft Flight Simulator. You can do all sorts of stuff with them. So bring up the flight plan here. We can bring up Navigraph charts, which is very cool. We can also load approaches and all that kind of stuff. We can bring up the airport chart on here, which is very cool. We can bring up the latest ATIS, which we know is basically standard. You can even bring up your Navigraph charts in here as well. So very, very capable bit of kit. Now we're getting pretty close to East Midlands there. I can just see it out the windscreen there. We can see Edinburgh power plant just off to the side of it. So we're going to make sure we've got our checklist done. Altimeter set. Cabin heat and defrost not required. Landing lights are on. The fuel system, yeah, the fuel's fine. We'll stick the fuel pump on low for now. Mixture is fine. We're keeping the engine warm with it. Fuel pump is set to low. Brake pressure's fine. We've got some brake pressure gauges down there. Ram air, close the ram air. Okay, yeah, I suppose that's going to help us manage our temperatures as well. Airport info ATIS is all done. Pattern altitude is fine. It's about 1,310 feet elevation east mids, so we'll do your circuits at 1,300. descent it to 2,000 at the moment. I'm just going to reduce our rate of descent a touch. The next one's the 4 landing checklist, so we're looking good there. And we are levelling off. So I'm just going to advance the throttle a bit. We don't need to go up to crazy speed. We've still got 10 miles to run. But we'll keep the speed under control. This central unit here, by the way, is the PMS GTN 750. Really, really good bit of kit. I've just got the free version, which gives you access to all these different kinds of features in here. Just basically the navigation and mapping features that you can see on here. Now, if you pay either a subscription or the full price of the unit, which is, I believe, 50 Great British pounds. Sorry, my microwave's going off. Then you can get access to loads more features as well on here. It's really, really capable bit of kit. I don't have the paid version at the moment, but it is well worth getting. So 8 miles to go. We can see East Mids very clearly there. We're going to fly circuits from runway 27 using a right-hand pattern to keep us away from the terminal. Now I'm going to go into heading select and start taking these off to the side here. Okay, we're going to get the autopilot flight director back off because I know you didn't tune into this to watch the simulator fly the aeroplane for me. Bring that little map up just to help me with my situational awareness a little bit. That iPad is very much in the way, but I guess we can get to get rid of it, probably? I don't know, we'll keep it up there because it does have the checklist on it, so that's fine for now, I guess. Don't want to be going right over the power plant. It is actually deactivated in real life. But still, I wouldn't want to be getting too close to one of those things. Now I'm going to bring the power all the way back. I'm going to allow it to slow down a touch, a little bit high, a little bit fast. I'm going to use our speed brakes just to get us within our flap limiting speed, which we've got. There we go. Just enunciated by the white arc on the speed tape. About a 2 mile final. This is going to give us maybe a little bit less than that. I'm going to lower the landing gear now. Take another stage of flaps. Okay, brakes pressurised, undercarriage is down. Mixture is coming full rich now as the prop is coming now full forwards. Fuel's on sufficient imbalance. Flaps are deployed. Instruments all on the green. Hatches harness secure. Landing lights on. Terrible job of lining this thing up, but struggling to look around a bit at the moment. We're going full flap now. Let the speed start to bleed back to about 100 knots. High approach speed, as you might imagine, for a high-performance aerofoil like this one. A lot of nose-up trim required. It's not the best handling thing in the world at low airspeed, which I would imagine is probably pretty accurate. Keeping a close eye on the speed here. Tricky to hold a constant attitude because the controls are just so twitchy, but I'll take that. Flaps are travelling, power's coming back in, and off we go. Positive climb gears coming up. Oh, my microwave's ready again. So, good stuff. Tricky aeroplane to handle at low airspeed, though. The high speed you have to maintain in this thing is something which can catch you out if you aren't prepared for it. So be well ahead of the aeroplane. Now what you may want to do is try to fly around the circuit with a stage of flap deployed. I realised I said I was going to do right-hand circuits and I just turned it to a left-hand circuit, but ignore me, I'm a commensurate liar. In the white arc, let's put a stage of flap in. Certainly I would be doing this at a smaller airfield, just to allow me to fly the circuit more safely at a low airspeed and keep pace with all the other aircraft. It's no good screaming around the circuit insane speeds when you're sharing it with lots of other light aircraft that are going much slower than you, just causing all sorts of problems for both them and you. Midfield downward here, so cool brakes are pressurised, parking brakes off, gears coming down. Mixture's full, rich, mags are on both. Fuel pump is on, and the fuel is on and sufficient. Flaps, we got 10 degrees in. Instruments are all in the green, carb heat we don't have, hatches and harnesses all secure, the landing lights are on. We'll take that as our pre-landing checklist. Now what I am going to do now is I'm actually going to speed the thing up a bit and I'm going to retract those flaps. Just to get a feel for the thing on a flapless approach. This is going to be flown. I'm going to fly this about 10 knots quicker than I flew the last one. So we're going to aim for about 110 knots, I guess. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room on final approach because it was a little bit tight last time. It doesn't help that I did a terrible job of lining up with the runway, but it's tricky when your hand that flies the plane is also the hand that does the mouse to look around. Just a shortcoming of my setup, I guess. Just getting the excuses out there as usual. Okay, that's more than close enough. Start coming back on the bat. Oil's getting a little bit hot now, so I'm going to open the cooler door back up. And I guess the ram air as well. Not that one, that one. Done a slightly better job of lining up with the runway. Carrying quite a lot of extra speed here, but we are clean, and like I said, the most common place to stall and crash a light aircraft is on a base to final turn, so guarding against that possibility, we are gear down, 3 green, runways clear and available, reds, blues and greens. 4 whites, which, sorry, 4 reds, which isn't ideal, but we're reducing our rate of descent to try and catch the normal glide slope. I mean, normally I wouldn't be aiming for the glide slope in a light aircraft anyway, because, oh my god, that thing does go off at the least appropriate times. Like I say, normally I wouldn't aim for the glide slope in a light aircraft anyway, because generally you want to be touching down on the numbers rather than on the touchdown markers. But it's useful as a bit of a reference. Wary of just how sensitive this thing got in the touchdown last time, so I'm trying to keep my touch as light as possible. A little better, felt a bit hard, but there we go. Flaps already up, we're going to advance power. About 30 inches and off we go again. Plus to climb with mostly insufficient runway, gear up. So what I've done now is just use OBS mode on the GTN 750 here to give me a 270 degrees extended center line just to help with situational awareness. It's something we often do in the 737 when we're doing any kind of visual maneuver to an airfield. But just to help me, because I am struggling to keep track of the airfields, just thought it would be a reasonably good idea. Right, so the last approach is we're going to try and do a glide approach. So this is a simulated engine failure on downwind or late downwind with a glide to land from that. So tricky maneuver at the best of times, especially when you've got zero experience or knowledge of the aircraft type that you're flying. But I'm imagining that this is going to be an incredibly slippery aeroplane in the glide, and I'm going to be using my speed brakes to get the thing to come down onto the runway. So I'm not going to be too conservative with my glide. I'm going to prioritise airspeed above everything else, and I use the speed brakes as I get out of jail free card. Yes, I know. However, if we do get low and slow, we're basically stuffed. Or rather, we're going in a field. Which will be fun for you guys, I'm sure. I'm keeping the aircraft very close, because I know I'm going to be doing this manoeuvre. We're also a bit higher than usual as well. Which is cheating a little bit, but not a huge amount. You can also note that I'm not deploying the landing gear yet, which is, again, tactical. I'm going to use the gear only when I'm convinced that I can make the runway. So I've brought the power back to idle now, so we may as well start the mover from here. More than enough altitude. Trim for the glide, which is about 110 knots. I think I'm going to just get past the power station, then turn in. And this time I've got the good old magenta line to help me. Again, prioritising airspeed above all else. See how our rate of descent increases in a turn. So we always have to factor that in. Cut the corner off and just aim straight at the... it's doing this on purpose, isn't it? Aim straight at the runway threshold from here. Definitely don't need any speed brakes. This is actually looking pretty tight. But I think we'll make it. We're just going to have to take the gear very, very close to the ground. Which in an emergency, sure. If you did this on a licensed skills test, you might make your examiner very nervous indeed. Okay, gears coming in, flaps coming in. We're going to use a balloon from the flaps. We definitely took out those approach lights. There we go, right on the numbers. So there's a great example of why stretching the glide doesn't work. Hey, those lights are frangible, right? They're meant to be run over, so nothing serious, it's fine. Okay, we've taxied clear, parking brake is set, reset 1000 RPM. We're going to pop off the landing lights, the strobes, the fuel pump. I'm also going to turn off the pitot heat and the canopy seal. There we go, and Sherman autopilot servos can go as well. And we're going to taxi and park up and see what we think about this aeroplane. Okay, here we are parked up. We'll do a quick mag check. Just to check that the grounding on the mags is still good. Check that it does actually cut off. We're going to go idle, avionics masters can come off, mixture goes cut off. I'll open the cooler door. Fuel can go off, mags can go off, alternator, master battery off, and pop the lights off as well. And when I can find the click spot, we will open the canopy. So, what do I think of the Flysimware Lancair Legacy? Well, overall, I am extremely impressed by this little thing. It is a lot of fun to fly around in Microsoft Flight Simulator, but I'll break it down specifically into what bits I really enjoyed, and then we'll go over some things that perhaps I didn't quite enjoy. And I'll leave it to you to fight it out in the comments if you agree or disagree with me. So first of all, the first thing I really like about this thing is the depth of the systems. Both the normal pilot interactable systems, the sort of things you'd use on a day-to-day basis as someone who flies one of these aeroplanes, but also the maintenance aspects as well is extremely impressive. The persistent features that follow you around from flight to flight and depend on how well you've been managing the engine are all very, very cool and sort of all promote that idea that this is your aeroplane and you're looking after it, as opposed to just jumping in it and abusing it as much as you want. So very, very cool. Really like that. All the circuit breakers, all the different little systems inside the plane. Very, very, very cool to see, but it's what you'd expect from Flysimware. That's kind of their whole reason for being, really. They are a very dedicated little dev team. Performance accuracy is the next big positive that I've got. As far as I can tell, bear in mind it's very tricky to get performance figures for these aircraft in this exact configuration. It pretty much does the numbers you would expect. In terms of fuel flow, it's pretty spot on for one of these engines as far as I can tell. Again, it's all a best guess from me, I'm afraid, because I've not been able to find all that accurate real-world figures for this specific aeroplane. But please, if anyone is out there in YouTube land who knows or owns one of these aeroplanes, flies one of these aeroplanes, and could tell me exactly how accurate these things are, please let me know. But as far as I can tell, very, very accurate. The next positive I got is the flight model of the aircraft. I feel very much like this is what one of these aeroplanes does fly like in real life. It's very sensitive, very light, very slight inputs on the stick results in quite a large deflection of the aircraft from its flight path, which is enjoyable in a lot of ways, but is also quite tricky as well. So there's a good amount of challenge in there to keep you engaged, especially if you're a more experienced pilot, you're used to flying airliners and all that kind of stuff around in the sim, and you think that flying a light aircraft might be a bit boring. This thing, definitely there is a challenge in there. The stall characteristics of the aeroplane are a case in point. It stalls exactly as I would expect this aeroplane, having read about what the stall characteristics of this aircraft are like. Thin, high performance aerofoil, it just snaps into a stall very, very quickly, and the stall characteristics aren't quite violent, so you do have to be on the ball with that with your spin recovery techniques just in case. And obviously normal flight, keep a very close eye on your airspeed to make sure that you aren't getting close to that sort of situation. A appreciable change in the stall characteristics with the gear and flaps deployed though, which again is what you'd expect, and very, very cool to see that they've accurately modelled that. Visuals is the next positive that I've got, and just look at it, it's absolutely fantastic. You see this metallic paint on there, beautifully represented. It's a lovely colour scheme, this one, which is why I've flown with it. You can see why it won those awards. You can even see the propeller is painted up as well. I'm sure that gets absolutely rashed up with stones and things like that in real life, but here in the simulator we've just got lovely shiny paint, and it does a great job of that. You can just see the amount of detail on things like the landing gear, the wingtip navigation and strobe lights, the pitot head there, you can see that. Really, really, really detailed both inside and out. So the visuals are incredible and as good as anything that I've seen in this simulator. We are obviously very spoiled in Flight Sim 2024 with really good looking aeroplanes, but I think this is probably up there with the best of them. And the final positive that I've got is the sounds. Now, bearing in mind again, not flown this aeroplane in real life, I know I sound like a broken record, but I have flown aeroplanes with this engine in real life, and it really, really does sound like this. Aside from the vibrations and the things obviously you're getting through the airframe, it feels so immersive to be sitting this thing with the engine running. It actually is more fun to do without the headphone simulation on, so you can really get a earful of the engine note, but I wanted to use the headphone simulation for you today just so you can hear my voice a little bit better. If you're an audiophile and you love the sound of piston engines, this is really an aeroplane for you because it does sound absolutely fantastic. All sorts of other little noises in there as well. The landing gear pumps, all the little alarms and warnings and things are all custom made, presumably recorded from the real aircraft as well, because I don't know where else they'd get all those things. So fantastic job with the sound modelling. Now, negatives. I've not got too many of these, as you might imagine, by the fact that I've been absolutely glazing this thing for the past 5 minutes, but there are a couple in there. First of all, there's a couple of little bugs still to work out, as far as I can tell. The thing with the light shining through the wing, the issues that I had getting the fuel calculator to turn on in flight. There's just a few little things here and there, little niggles, that you sort of think, could be a little bit better, maybe. So I'm sure they will improve, and this will be completely rendered irrelevant within a few weeks, as the Flysimware devs, or dev, I believe it's just one guy on his own, works through all these little niggles and sorts them all out. But just bear in mind, if you are buying it as of today, there are a few little bugs in there. Go away, I don't want a forklift, thanks. The next one I've got is, the price is actually quite expensive, $47, which is about 40 Great British pounds. For a light aircraft, that's really quite expensive. You can pick up some really accurate, really well-modelled airliners in Microsoft Flight Simulator for about the same price, even perhaps a little bit less. So you might be able to make the argument that it's a little bit overpriced. Now, I love to see accurate, highly detailed light aircraft represented in the simulator, so I am willing to perhaps pay a little bit more than most, but some people I'm sure will be put off by the fact that it is quite expensive for what is essentially a small light aircraft. And the final thing I've got down here is a bit of a subjective one. I put relevance because really what we have here is an experimental type aeroplane that's built in low numbers and is mostly only flown in the United States. Now, I know a lot of the guys who use this simulator and the guys watching our videos come from the States, and I'm sure you've seen these things flying around if you are part of the GA community. However, I've never seen one, and I am unlikely to see one flying around in the UK. I may see one if I'm really lucky. There might be the odd one knocking around, because we do have November registered aircraft over here. But if you are a European or an Asian or an Australasian or anything like that, you are unlikely to see one of these things knocking around, certainly as far as I know, which means that maybe there's a limited amount of interest in it for you. Certainly, if this weren't a Flysimware aeroplane, I wouldn't have bothered. I was just intrigued enough by the fact that this is one of my favourite developers to pick this aeroplane up to perhaps do a video on it. I'm certainly not regretting my purchase from a personal standpoint, but it may be a bit of a struggle to sell this aeroplane to your average casual flight simmers because of a combination of the price and the fact that they've probably never heard of it. But anyway, that's just what I think. I'm sure you've got something completely different to write in the comments below, and you are angrily typing as we speak. However, that's going to be it for me today, and I'm going to sign off here. So I really hope to see you in the next video, and take care until next time. See ya!